And on that point, with me in studio now is Aarmoni. Adi is a projects manager for the organization Educating for Excellence. It's a group that works with thousands of young Israelis with a focus on low socioeconomic backgrounds. They've been on the front lines, really, of dealing with the youth trauma, shock, mental illness that can be brought on by a life in the south of Israel under near constant rocket attack. Adi, thank you so much for being with me. I want to talk, of course, about kids, the kids that you work with every day, that have been for months now, sometimes every night, sometimes every week, waking up in the middle of the night, rushing to a bomb shelter because of an incoming rocket alert, or sometimes a rocket actually landing nearby. What does it do to them emotionally?
I think the most important thing to understand is those kids' everyday life is cut. Unfortunately, those kids were born, most of those kids were born for this situation, and every few years they have the same story again and again, and they have to deal with it again. And sometimes it takes about a year, 2 years for a kid to rise up from the trauma and then go through it again. So it's very, very stressful for them. So
emotionally, I mean, do they become emotional when you work with them in a classroom setting or in a therapeutic setting? Do they cry? Are they too shocked to even show emotion anymore because they're just...
It depends. There is all kind of kids. Some kids take it as their normal day and go through that and it's okay. And some kids, after an alarm, can't talk for a few minutes. They become very sensitive to noise. Something fell on the floor, a motorcycle going in the street. It stresses them out.
Is that a short-term impact? I mean, especially because, as you mentioned, many of these kids grow up in this environment. It's something that stays with them for the rest of their lives. Let's say a motorcycle, like you mentioned, or a car like backfiring and making a loud noise, or a firework. Later on in life, are they still going to have that trauma?
Yes, and unless they're in an environment that can nurture them and listen to them and talk with them. So, but yes, we can see it in kids that are not living there anymore, and 5 years later are still feeling that feeling. Most definitely, it goes on with you. It's not for the month or for the days and then it go back to normal.
We saw almost 500 rockets and mortar shells yesterday.
Yes.
But before that, of course, the major escalation was the Gaza war 4 years ago. But then there was a war before that, and before that, almost 14 years now, there's been escalation, conflict with Hamas. It's now generation to generation. What about for the parents and who also themselves grew up in this life? How does that impact families?
I think one of the things we have to understand that a kid reacts. There's basically two ways for him, two things that makes him react. The first thing is himself. You can have two kids go through exactly the same trauma, and one of them will be okay, and a day later will go to school and everything is good, and one of them will take a month for him to smile again.
Yeah.
So that's number one. And number two is the fact that there's something that goes out there that they have no control over them, and even more scary, their parents have no control over them, and even more scary, the school have no control. So basically all the systems which are very, very strong in their normal day, in a second, they run with them to the shelter. There's nothing else they can do.
So with those kids that are very difficult to reach, that you know that they're traumatized, yes. Even the parents are traumatized. At Educating for Excellence, how do you kind of attempt to reach them, to have a breakthrough?
What we try to do, and I have to say it's not only us, I have to say the schools in the south are very, very, very sensitive, and I have social workers in school and psychologists in school and counselors and the teachers and everybody try to give the kid as much support as he can, and each one in what he needs. Someone needs to talk about it and need therapy, and some other one just want to go back to their normal day. We try as much as we can to make in those situations the most normal situations we can. So if after school the kids come to us, we'll do it. I mean, even
try to help them as much as
if it's in the class, which is a bomb shelter, shelter for bombs. Only so the kids can have his... Yes, definitely.
All right, Adi, thank you so much for being with us here on the show. Great to have you. Appreciate your